From training to performing, join our big league conversation. Welcome to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast with your host, Eric Cressey.
Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. We're really excited to have Joe Panik with us today. Before we get to it, I want to just let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. It's an all-in-one superfood supplement with 75 whole food sourced ingredients that are designed to support your body's nutrition needs across several areas, ranging from energy and immunity to gut health and hormonal support. If you jump over to athleticgreens.com/Cressey, you can claim a special offer of 20 free travel packets valued at $79 with your first purchase. This is something that we recommend to a lot of our athletes. It's really helpful for our minor league baseball players and our college athletes, and even our nutrition on the teenage front with people who may not be getting enough fruits and vegetables in, and the travel packets in particular make it really convenient to take quality nutrition on the road. I really view it as a nutritional insurance policy. What's awesome is it's carefully selected ingredients that give you digestive enzymes, prebiotics and probiotics, and essential vitamins and minerals. And there's zero compromise on the formulation. There's no chemicals, artificial colors, flavors, artificial sweeteners, or added sugar. It works well for people who are gluten and dairy free, you name it. So definitely a big advocate for Athletic Greens. My wife and I use it regularly. And again, if you want to jump over to athleticgreens.com/Cressey, it's CRESSEY. You can claim your special offer today and get 20 free travel packets valued at $79 with your first purchase. With that said, we're going to get right to the show. Today's guest is an infielder for the San Francisco Giants. He was a first-round draft pick in 2011 out of St. John's University and made his major league debut in 2014. He was also a World Series champion with the Giants that year. He was an All-Star in 2015 and won a Gold Glove in 2016. And he just started up with us this past offseason at Cressey Sports Performance and is finishing up a really, really good spring training performance where he wound up hitting .469. With that said, we're excited to recognize and welcome Joe Panik to the podcast. All right, Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to talk to you. So I feel like we get so caught up training pitchers that people forget that we actually work with position players too. So hopefully this will be a good reflection of it. So obviously I did your intro and kind of discussed your history being a Northeast guy. And I think one of the questions and one of the challenges that we often face having a facility in the Northeast, it's pretty easy to evaluate pitchers. 95 is 95, whether you're in Georgia, Texas, California, or Massachusetts. Hitters are a different story. It's really, really challenging to evaluate a hitter from New York. So talk about some of those things that you dealt with kind of as you went through high school and became more and more of a coveted prospect in those days.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, coming out of high school, it's, it's kind of tough because, it's almost like this stereotype of, Northeast ball players can't play ball and whatnot, and especially hitters, because like you said, pitchers, it's a, radar gun will read what it reads. Hitter wise, we might not be as quote unquote advanced or whatnot because you're not playing all year round like the boys down south or out west and whatnot. So for me, and I think, I don't know if it was one of the reasons why I went undrafted out of high school, but when you get your opportunity for the in showcases, you have to make the most of it. But sometimes you can kind of get overlooked again because scouts are looking more for the guys down south and whatnot. So for me, honestly, going throughout high school, it was all about kind of getting my mechanics down, becoming the best ball player I can be, and then finally I got my shot in college to kind of go to St. John's, kind of get myself out there, and I played well in St. John's, Cape Cod League. That kind of all kind of took off from there. But in high school, as a hitter, it's you're kind of behind the eight ball a little bit.
Yeah. And to some degree you're being modest because I reached out to Matt Hyde. You know Matt. Matt's like my favorite scout on the planet, and Matt heads up the Northeast area code team in 2007, which was his first year that you went. So I said, hey, did you ever have Joe Panik on an area code roster in high school? And he said he was on our first New York Yankees area code team in 2007, along with future big leaguers Brett Lowry, Anthony DeSclafani, Chris Dwyer, Corey Mazzoni, Scott McGuff, Sean Nolan, all future MLB players. Ryan Westmoreland was on that team. Phil Pohl, who's now a major league bullpen catcher. And he said, Joe Panik, I told Joe you could play for me any day. And one of the things that he said stood out the most for you is you went out to Long Beach and all of the big dogs, the West Coast schools, the Southern schools, the Texas schools, were all trying to offer you big if you'd be willing to decommit from St. John's, but you honored the commitment. And he talked about, so long story short, yes, Joe is one of my all-time favorites. And he sent me a picture of you looking like you were about 12 years old. And so talk about that. So obviously that speaks a lot to your character and how important loyalty is. But what was the allure of St. John's? What was it that got you to stay close to home when every other kid from New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut wants to go down south to the green grass and the pretty girls of the SEC and ACC?
Oh, man, there's a lot of factors that kind of went into it. So coming out of high school, I kind of see, players prior to me, like guys older than me, some guys, would go down south and kind of get lost in the shuffle. So one of the things that I really looked for when I was looking at schools was not a promise to play right away, because you never, if somebody promises you playing time right away, I wouldn't believe it, just because you have, for anything you do, you have to earn your way in life, whether it's on the fields, work, school, whatever it is, you have to earn your way. So for me, I looked at kind of the way the coach would recruit, like let's say, is the guy going to bring in 5 infielders? Okay. Are you going to be redshirting the first year? Whatnot? Like, how does he kind of handle incoming players? So for me, I wanted to, St. John's, they didn't over recruit, quote unquote. And I kind of saw on their roster who was a senior, who was juniors. And for me, talking with Ed Blankmeyer, he was like, listen, I'm not going to promise you anything, but you're going to have the opportunity to start right away, and that's all I really asked for, was an opportunity to be able to play right away. Because I knew coming out of high school, if I was to play right away, I would be able to basically have 3 years of growth, 3 years of, playing games, kind of getting myself out there in front of the scouts.
Those at-bats you didn't get in high school against, elite arms.
Exactly. And so for me, granted, I, went into St. John's and in the fall time practices, I went out there and I kind of proved myself. I had a good fall, and, I was, given the chance to start, from day one, and I just kind of took off with it. I didn't, I didn't kind of look back. So for me, I wanted a chance, an opportunity to play right away, and St. John's gave me that. That was probably the biggest thing for me. Kind of when looking at schools. The second thing was, I wanted a chance to win. There were some schools early in the process when I was, talking to schools and whatnot. I wanted to, some schools weren't as successful, and I wanted to, have a chance to win. I'm not going to throw any other schools under the bus or whatnot, but it was, I wanted to win and make it to the NCAA tournament. And again, St. John's being a Northeast school, they were, them, UConn, they were, Louisville at the time, the best schools in the Big East. So every year we had a chance to make the NCAA tournament, which we ended up doing twice in my 3 years.
So that was a big part of it. So, and so this is the follow up to that one. So I asked Matt, I was like, why do you think that Joe was not a draft pick out of high school? So I want to get your initial gut response to this. He said he was undersized and his tools weren't huge. Not a great runner, just enough arm, not big power, and the scouts weren't 100% sold on shortstop as a future position. He was really going to have to hit, and as much as I and the other guys loved him, it was an awful lot to ask of a high school kid from Hopewell, New York, to come in and have the hit tool carry him. He went to St. John's, and even when the Giants took him and the industry wasn't sold, he was a first-round pick once again because of the tools. But I've always said this about Joe Panik. He has 2 above-average tools that got overlooked. He could hit in all caps, and he made all the routine plays. That made him a plus defender. You were out when the ball was hit to Joe Panik, especially with 2 outs. So something to be said about doing the simple things savagely well, putting the bat on the ball, always making a play. So is there a lot of pride that went into that? Millions of ground balls and all that people never really heard about?
Yeah, I think, every sport now you look for the kind of the flashy, you want the, football, and now it's the combine and whatnot. You're seeing all that stuff going on. And, the guy that runs the 4.3, 4.4. Sometimes, you know what? The guys that are most successful are the guys that can just play ball. That that does the little things right. That are smart. That know where to be in the right spot at the right time. So for me, kind of, again, being from the Northeast, I was 17 years old coming out of high school, so I was younger. I wasn't fully, developed, size wise. I was probably 6 foot 170 coming out of high school. So I knew back then that I had, I didn't have the strength and conditioning kind of knowledge back then. I did not, and I kind of wish I did. I don't know how far that would have helped me and taken me. But, I put all my time and effort, again, being in the Northeast, swinging, tee work, front toss, getting my mechanics down. So when I get outside, I'm ready to go. My swing's as good as it can be, and then it's the ground balls. My dad used to, ever since we were young, and he would take us to the park with my mother, me and my brother. He would be like, we're going to work on defense first, and then we'll hit after. It was almost, I don't know how to say this. It was almost like work first, play later, because everybody wants to hit. Everybody wants to hit.
That's a good point.
But, let's work on both sides of the ball. And I took pride in, making the most out of what I have. I knew I wasn't the most gifted athlete, especially going like area code games, and I'm going up against kids that are, hitting balls, over the fence, flying.
On the Texas Rangers roster, there's not a guy under 6'5", 250.
Exactly. And it's like, what? Well, how am I going to compete against these people? How am I going to beat these people? How am I going to, show myself better than these people? And it's like, all right, I'm not going to go out there and try to be something I'm not. I have to be the best version of myself. And for me, that was, going out there and playing the game the right way, doing whatever it takes to win. And, and again, I think going to St. John's, the coach there, Blankmeyer, he really, helped me in that aspect too, because he's an old school guy, and really taught me the game even more and really helped me kind of jumpstart my career kind of that way.
That's a great point. And it actually feeds. So, and I think the other question is like with that text from Matt, like I have to assume you were cognizant of that, right? As the draft discussions are taking place and you're playing in front of GMs, scouting directors at area codes, is that some of those feedbacks, those are motivating factors. Did that drive you a lot at that age?
Exactly. I mean, nobody wants to be told, listen, you're not good enough, or you're not, physical enough, whatnot, because, everybody's dream, you're there because you want to play professional baseball. And I kind of saw that, and it's like, all right, well, I kind of knew where I stood kind of going into my senior year of high school. And granted, there was still some scouts that came to watch me play, but it was like as an athlete, you kind of know, what was going down, and the reason why. And again, I knew the reason why I wasn't going to be, drafted. It's, I just wasn't, physically mature enough. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't ready to play the pro game, which looking back, I'm very thankful for that. I didn't even have to make that choice between pro and college, because I think college for me was the best thing that could happen for me, growing as a ball player, as a person, as a man. So, you definitely know based off like area code games and that feedback, it's like, all right, well, you kind of know where you kind of stand.
Well, it worked. I mean, I like the numbers, and you're probably acutely aware, but a 398 batting average with 10 home runs, 57 RBIs during your junior season, and you put up a 509 on base percentage. So obviously it worked. And, there's a good lesson there for a lot of those kids that think that they have to race south, they have to go to a huge school, or even kids that are dead set on the Division I dream. They there's lots of development that happens at Division II schools, junior college schools, all that. So I think that's an important message. And where you were interested too is right. So you you went directly, or you went to the big leagues in 2014 and played in the World Series that year. So you had a huge home run against the Cardinals in the NLCS, and then there was obviously a really memorable web gem on the double play in Game 7 of the World Series versus the Royals. So I'm gonna shift gears on that a little bit. And I remember Matt Duffy wrote a really good guest blog for the Players Tribune, where he talked about like the amazing culture that the Giants had there, where when guys came up as really young players, it wasn't just like rookie hazing. It was, let's embrace these guys, let's put them in a really good position for these young players to thrive. What advice would you give to a lot of the coaches on this podcast, and more established players even that are looking to help up and coming guys hit the ground running, whether it's freshmen in college, pro organizations, or even just like high school teams trying to find, senior mentorship for up and coming players?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is, if however many guys that you have on your team, whether it's 25, if you're on that team, you're expected to help this team win. And I think that was the biggest thing for the Giants was the older guys. I was basically told to me like, hey, you're here for a reason. Like, we need you to be that one, basically a link in the chain, a link, we need 25 links. And they really felt, believed in that. You have to be 25 links in a chain. And for me, the guy, you're going to have, they're going to have their fun with you. They're not going to, they're going to tease you a little bit about being a young guy and whatnot, but they never made me feel uncomfortable. They wanted me, again, to, be comfortable in my own skin, be comfortable with who I am, and when I go out there, that I don't feel inferior to anybody. That, I'm out there, I'm one of the guys, I'm one of them. And to this day, I still, with young guys, I'm still that way. I'm that way to them because I want them to feel like, hey, you're one of us. We need you to. We need everything you got. So we don't want you going out there and feeling like you're the young guy. No, you are whoever you are, and be that way. Play that way. Play confident. Kind of basically be who you've always been. Mm-hmm. So,
and I think that actually is like a really good segue into the next question is, and I don't even know if you know this number, but it feeds into some of the stuff you talked about at your younger age. So last year you struck out in 7.7 of your at-bats. That's the lowest rate in the National League by more than 2%. Meanwhile, all of baseball is striking out or hitting home runs. They're going in the exact opposite direction. Mm-hmm. How do you reconcile those two things? Obviously, everybody, is speaking from a financial standpoint. You get paid for homers and, trying to just hit over the ship and all that. And meanwhile, you're, just like you did in high school, just like you did in college, you're putting the bat on the ball and giving your chance of success. So how do you reconcile those two things in a game that's changing, sticking true to what you really do well?
Yeah, that's kind of the tricky point. You kind of brought up right there. It's because, as a ball player, you see the guys, who get paid and, you see, what teams are looking for. But at the same time, I kind of know my skill set, and I know also to the park that I play in. Playing at Oracle Park. That sounds weird to say. It used to be AT&T Park now.
I didn't realize they had changed the name. Holy cow! Yeah. I'm like, did you get traded and not tell me?
Yeah, no. I know. I'm so used to saying AT&T Park. Mm-hmm. Now it's Oracle, but it's 421 to right center. So for me, yeah. So kind of again being smart and kind of understanding your strengths and whatnot. You have to kind of play to them. So for me, it's. Yeah, I know, if I was to hit 20 homers, that would be great. But what do I sacrifice to get that? Am I going to be a 200 hitter with 20 home runs? Then I'm not playing. Then I'm not playing in the majors. So I always talk to stick to who you are, stick to your strengths. You obviously have to build your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. But as an individual, if you're a gap-to-gap line drive hitter, stay true to that. Sometimes, even myself, I get caught up in it too. I got caught up in it a little bit and trying to do too much as a hitter. That's when you get yourself out. That's when you get yourself into a funk. Yeah. So I think it's mentality. Again, if I'm 6'3", 230, corner infielder, I'm gonna take my shots and be a little more of an all or nothing guy maybe. But when you're 6'6", 195, playing at the Giants ballpark, be smart and take your shots when you can. But again, my job is to win ball games, and so I know my skill set is hit and run, hitting behind runners, putting the ball in play, moving runners around. That's what I've always done best, and I think, especially when I was younger, I think that's really what helped me kind of stay up here and kind of solidify me as as who I am, is my skill set, and I'm never going to get rid of that. Yeah, I can try to add some power here and there, but I'm never going to get away from who I am.
Yeah, well, and that's an interesting maybe parallel or maybe segue into this next question is, we talked with Richard Blyer on a podcast that'll air soon, and Richard's he's not a crazy arm speed guy, and it's you look at baseball right now, bullpens are going to everybody throws 96 to 100, and he's a guy who's 87 to 90 with a really good cutter, and so it becomes really really challenging to find guys that you can emulate. As a high contact percentage guy, I mean, do you look at a Joey Votto or who are the hitters that you really like to watch and why?
Yeah, so there's a few guys. Somebody like, for me, I don't even look at like the high contact guys. For me, I kind of look at Daniel Murphy. He's one of the big guys that I've always kind of looked at, just from his kind of his swing kind of standpoint. Just kind of see how he took off from the Mets to Washington.
Yep.
And kind of seeing what he did. One of our assistant hitting coaches, Rick Shue, he used to coach Murph in Washington, so kind of talking with him and whatnot. But I'm always looking to see certain players. I mean, honestly, another guy, he's a righty and I'm a lefty hitter, but I'm watching video of Buster Posey. This guy, I'll watch guys that have really clean swings and just guys that are consistently, high, not just home runs, but high average guys. Because I want to see their swing pass, see what they're trying to, how their load to head movement. There's certain things that I'm kind of swing pass, seeing how they're getting in and out of the zone type deal. So I would say those two guys, once each side of the plate. Just kind of looking for some type of similarities.
Absolutely. So this is, by your own admission, it's been your best spring to date, right? So you're hitting 469, you're on base, half the time. Obviously, we did some different stuff on the physical conditioning side of things this off season, and you also got the thumb repaired last year during the season after that injury. But I know you mentioned you've also made some changes to your swing. I think you said you were working with your brother a lot, right? He does a lot on that front. So what's been in the works? What's changed, and what was kind of the impetus for doing that?
You know what? I think, for me, just at the end of the year, so after I tore my thumb and then I had a little groin issue, at the last month and a half of the year, I really didn't feel like I had my legs kind of underneath me, and I was kind of searching for power. And whenever you start searching for power, that's when you get kind of off mechanically. Mm-hmm. And I just got into a little funk, and talking with our hitting coaches, I basically told them that I wanted to just try. I want to try like a little in my load, kind of like a little leg kick / like hover. Everybody knee tucks. Everybody has a different term for it. But I want to, instead of doing a toe tap like I've always done, I want to get a little more of a load, kind of going back, and just to kind of see kind of where that would take me, kind of get me in a better position, from the moment I get my foot down. So they're like, hey, listen, go for it. Send us videos and whatnot, and we'll kind of work through it. And so my brother, he's a head coach at Iona College right now, in New York. So I got a chance to work with him, and even my father. He's he's still to this day one of my best hitting coaches, because he's seen me swing throughout my entire life. So I didn't want to go through a full swing change like a lot of guys do. Like, I don't want to change my hands, because I want to, again, I want to I want to be who I am, but I want to get myself in the best position to allow my hands to work. And just working through this winter, with this little leg kick that I've been kind of doing, I've been able to, again, get my foot down on time and get my weight shifted and my hips firing, get everything firing at the right time, which in turn has really allowed my hands and my bat path to be really consistent this spring.
Yeah. I think it's a good lesson for like a lot of the the more advanced players who maybe are listening to this. Is that I think so often you get the sensationalized stories of a Chris Taylor or Justin Turner or JD Martinez, guys who have made really dramatic changes to their swing and obviously had huge upside because of it. But you don't know, it doesn't always make like great internet reading or clickbait material when someone just has a subtle tinker. And I think you're a good example, right? You're a guy who never had that debilitating injury aside from the thumb. It was always more like the little irritations where you kind of have to listen when it whispers instead of waiting for it to yell. So, it's you realize that you're playing at 90% a lot, and a little refocus on the swing can make a big difference. So, I think that's a lesson for a lot of people: is tinker, don't overhaul.
Yeah, I think again, because like you said, there might be a big reward. Like again, in some cases, JD Martinez and Turner and Taylor, those guys. But again, I've had success at the major league level, and I know it's in there. It's just a matter of, okay, how can I get a little bit better? And I knew going into the off season that even this spring, like I was going to give this kind of tinker a shot, but I'm like, if I'm not comfortable with it, it wasn't such a dramatic change where if I'm not comfortable with it, I could always revert back to what I've been doing.
Yeah.
So I knew that was something I wanted to do. I was like, all right, small changes, because you can always kind of, it gives you a little more wiggle room, a little more play. Whereas if you're going from, one thing and then completely changing it, you're basically all in.
Yeah, absolutely. The guys around the facility give me a hard time. They call it a Cresseyism, but the line I always drop is small hinges swing big doors. So I think that gets overlooked a lot. All right, so we're going to go lightning round now.
All right.
So what advice would you give to a teenage Joe Panik if you could go back in time?
Oh, I would say enjoy the ride a little bit more, because I think a teenage Joe Panik, he was very serious, and you have to be serious, but I was so caught up in kind of going kind of the next step, getting to the next level, instead of just enjoying the moment. And I'm kind of looking back, that's enjoy the moment. That's what I'd say to a young me.
Absolutely. What about college Joe Panik? Does the advice change?
College Joe Panik. No, I would give him the same thing. But yeah, I'd say give him the same message. Again, just enjoy the moment. Don't focus on things that you cannot control. I would probably advance a little bit. Don't focus on things you can't control.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of your claims to fame is that, right, you have a lot of feel for the speed of the game. For a guy who makes all the routine plays, consistently, puts the barrel on the ball. Is, what are some strategies that you give to that kid where the game does speed up on him? Like, what do you do to make sure that you're reined in, and whether it's Game 7 of the World Series or the first game of spring training, that you're even keeled?
Yeah, I think it's always. I wish I remember the quote. It's somebody said that in times of stress, you basically revert back to your training.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact quote, but for me, it's all about preparation, and the more you prepare yourself, not only physically, but whether you're out, whether you're in the box hitting or whatever, you do your mental preparation on the pitcher, or as a fielder, your hitter. Mm-hmm. You're going to be in the right spot. You're going to trust in your abilities. If you're not prepared, you're not thinking. That's when the game speeds up on you. So always think, just pay attention. That's the biggest thing I would tell even a young Joe. Just pay attention to the little things. Pay attention to the pitcher hitters, because that's when you get in these big spots, and then your mind's going 1,000 miles per hour. In reality, it's like, all right, well, this is the situation. You just kind of break everything down. And the biggest thing I was told is breathe.
Yeah.
Just breathe, focus on your breathing, and then kind of slow your heart rate down that way.
Absolutely. Favorite teammate of all time and why?
Oh, favorite teammate. Oof. Let's see. That's a tough one here because some current ones might not be happy if I. Oh, favorite teammate. I'd say Andrew Susak. He's now in the Orioles organization, but this is a kid. He came up with me in 2014, and just funny kid, just hilarious. He was actually my wedding. Just kind of came up in the minor leagues with him. Just you always have those guys that can make you laugh, kind of whatnot. He was that kid.
All right. So we talked about hitters that you look at, guys that you admire in that front. What about defensive players? Will you watch footage of other infielders to see how they play guys and patterns that they actually put into practice?
I'm very fortunate. I get a front row seat every day. A guy I always watch and pay attention to is our shortstop, Brandon Crawford. So again, he's somebody that, again, I get to, from footwork standpoint, I get to work with him every day. Mm-hmm. And I think he's been a big influence on me as a defender also, just kind of watching him and being able to talk with him. And mm-hmm. there's so much that you can pick up from a guy like him, his smoothness and his feel for the game, and just knack for being in the right spots and whatnot. So he's definitely, again, like I said, I'm very fortunate to have a front row seat, for 5 years now of watching him.
Absolutely. All right. So as we kind of start to round this out, we're about a half an hour in. So, we obviously got a lot of middle school, high school, college players, minor league guys, and honestly probably some big league ones, but also a lot of coaches, sports staff, athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, things like that. What if you could kind of speak to you've obviously been in one organization for a considerable amount of time, so maybe haven't experienced different levels of pro ball in that regard. But what are the things that you see from the coaches that are out there? What are the ones that have been the most impactful for you, whether it's in high school, college, you name it? What are the characteristics that that they demonstrate that have helped you the most, and what are the things that you've experienced that maybe have been roadblocks to your development along the way?
I think for me, the most successful coaches and the coaches I think have worked best with players, going back college, minors, and majors, are the coaches are that, this might sound weird, they listen. It's they listen to the player. That it's a communication. It's not just a one-way street. I think obviously coaches, even players, they're very strong in their beliefs. But I think the best quality is somebody that can just communicate with the player, and the player communicates back. It has to be a two-way street where if something's going, let's say something's going wrong mechanically, or the coach thinks there's something going on mechanically, the player has to be able to basically, I'm not saying talk back like in a snapback type of way, but it's a conversation. It's a, hey, what are you feeling? It's not a, hey, this is it. This is the way. There's multiple ways to do every job. Whether it's there's no cookie cutting basically. Yep. So some players, hitters, you'll see it in the minor leagues a lot. Still not. I'm not talking about the Giants. I'm talking about other people I've known in other organizations. Like certain coaches will change players basically against their will, like that. And then and then the player's out of the game because they didn't have the conviction in the change. They didn't feel comfortable with the change, and so for me it's important to have that line of communication. And see how the guys are. How are you feeling? Do you feel what I'm trying to tell you? It's not just you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. Okay, that's good. Well, no, explain to people, talk to the players, again, that's, I think, I just brought up another point. If as a coach, if you mechanically or something, you see something, explain it to the kid. Don't just say you're doing it wrong. Explain everything, because the more a player understands what you're trying to say, and the more that they will believe in it. The more that they believe in it, the less that they're going to think about it. They're just going to kind of go and run with it, and the more conviction that they'll have in the change.
Absolutely. What about parting wisdom for like the up and coming players who want to be the next Joe Panik, whether it's a kid from New York or a kid from Texas or Florida or California?
I think, the biggest thing that I've always had is, believe in yourself. That's something. Always believe in your abilities and stay true to who you are. I mean, again, I kind of, trust the process, so to speak. I believe in myself. Again, going back to when it's, hey, you're not, big enough, strong enough, fast enough to play. I still believed in who I was, and I kept working. There's no substitute for hard work. It's, instead of going out there and, partying all day in high school, I was out there, I was working. I was working on my craft. That's something I want. It's something I wanted to do. Was play baseball. So I gave 100% effort into that, and I never stopped believing in myself along the way. And I think that kind of chip on my shoulder, kind of proving people wrong type attitude, I think that's kind of what led me to, where I am today.
Yeah, it's very easy to say that, and a lot of kids do say that, but it's very hard to back it up with the hard work over an extended period of time, and you obviously have done that. So it's been cool to see this and actually learn a little bit more over the last little bit. Obviously, you were a big hit with the crew at our facility, so I'm glad that a lot of the people out here got a chance to hear some of your experiences and also tap into your expertise a little bit.
Thanks, sir.
I really appreciate you coming on. If folks want to find out more about you, it's at Joe Panik on both Instagram and Twitter, right?
Yep.
You just came out of Instagram hibernation. I saw as your first post in a while. So
yeah,
very well played. You earned some brownie points with your wife for that one.
Exactly.
Awesome. But we really appreciate you having on some time or setting aside some time to hop on the call with us, and really wish you well this season.
All right. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. Subscribe to continue listening to our show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or YouTube. If you like what you heard, we'd encourage you to leave a review of our show on iTunes or email us your feedback at elitebaseballpodcast@gmail.com. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to our show, and we'll see you next time.